Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Jedi Hill, where we're going to be talking about freedom in all aspects, from the mental freedom, the spiritual freedom, and the freedom from government tyranny. Like, let's limit government back the way it's supposed to be. Today's special guest is the Libertarian Party treasurer for the state of Maryland. So we're up here in the state level for the third party that's actually working on defending your freedoms. And it's the only one that's doing it because the other two are the wings of the same bird. Though I don't know why the left is trying to actually eat the bird and kill itself, but that's a whole nother discussion. So thank you so much for being on here, Travis Lerol.
Yep, you got it. Thank you for having me. I
got one right first one.
Nice.
I have butchered so many people's names. Like one guest is John Glatz, and I said John Galtz because I'm thinking Atlas Shrugged and Galtz Gulch.
Yep. Oh, names are tough, especially in politics. You meet so many people, and the names are all different, and it's a challenge.
It really is. But that's what we're here for, to get our names out there.
Absolutely.
We have name recognition, so we can actually have a little bit of influence to move things in the proper direction.
Yeah. That's a perpetual battle. We find that in our state, libertarians often get shut out of the media and get very low coverage. We have to work for every bit of it.
I'm a libertarian myself, though. Anybody that believes in freedom has libertarian values, whether you're on the D or the R.
Absolutely.
There's some libertarian in you somewhere. We just got to bring it out.
Oh, yeah. I talk to people all the time who we're not familiar with the party, but they have those tendencies. And once they hear what we're about, they like the idea.
And we give a chance. Technology's going, so the activism of one person can be amplified 1,000,000-fold now.
Absolutely. Something catches online, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and we at least, thank God, have Twitter back. It's not completely censored.
Yeah. I admit I kind of gave up on Twitter for a while there myself. I don't even have a Twitter account, but people are taking it and using it for good now, which is kind of nice. So I'm pleased to see that's
I
going.
had one before, and I didn't really use it because it was so censored. And it's like, okay, I've tried to do 3 tweets and I get shut down for 3 months.
Yeah. And it's rough, especially around the 2020 cycle. I know a whole bunch of libertarian stuff all got shut down just before the debates, which that's when you would need to be getting that message out there.
Well, exactly. And I'm so disappointed the libertarians did not stand for liberty on this one, and they just curtailed to the beast. Because all we had to do, rebel, was just to assemble peacefully, as the First Amendment says, and proceed with our election cycle.
Yep. Absolutely.
That would have been the biggest rebellion, would have brought massive press coverage, because they wouldn't not be able to talk about us.
Absolutely.
But of course, they had moles and things all the way at the top, so it didn't work out that way.
I have a good feeling about this next time. I think we have some good people in there now. I think we're going to probably see more action.
Oh, yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it. So what are some of the things you're focused on to advance freedom and, claw back our little bit of freedoms here and there in Maryland?
Well, we got all kinds of issues. Maryland's, our title for the state is the Free State, but that's a bit of an optimistic statement. And we have all kinds of problems going on. This year, we have Maryland Senate Bill 1. This was their top priority for the year. And it prohibits people from wearing, carrying, or transporting a firearm in a wild list of locations. Basically, all those locations that the Bruin verdict specifically said, you cannot ban these things. Maryland's like, we're just going to ban it anyways. So I'm optimistic that the courts will eventually strike this down, but it is passing. It already has passed, putting the governor's signature. He's probably going to sign it. Last I heard.
Well, hopefully he has some sense, and there's something in there that he's against. And I don't know if he's left or right for the governor there, because there's 50 of them. It's hard to keep track.
Oh, absolutely. Strong left. So he's come out in favor of this stuff. So I imagine this will have to go to the courts.
Absolutely. Hey, who's ever there in Maryland, get this in the court system, day it goes through, so we can shut it down as fast as possible.
Yep. I know Maryland Shell Issue, our local 2A group that focuses specifically on our state, has already collected plaintiffs for the case. So they plan to run challenges right off the bat, which definitely keep an eye out on your local state's advocacy groups because they are often the front line of a lot of these issues. So it's very important to be involved.
Now, for the people that aren't as well versed, because there's a lot of zombies walking around, literal zombies, but it's neither here nor there. What is the importance of the Second Amendment? How did the founding fathers look at it? And it's right below freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. So why is it number 2?
Well, the right to self-defense is critical. Without that, every other right can be taken from you. So you have a right to protect yourself with whatever means you have available. Now it's firearms. In previous eras, crossbows, swords. The same principle applies in all eras. Given the context of the Constitution, we had come fresh from a revolution which in fact Concord and Lexington were caused by the British trying to take colonial arms.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously this was not acceptable to the colonials, and the whole war kicked off. So we've got a long history of that. And if you look at the state constitutions, Virginia in particular is one that the US Constitution's Bill of Rights was based on. You'll see the same rights over and over again, particularly the rights to bear arms, in some cases even the right to rebellion, as in New Hampshire's.
Go New Hampshire. I know they're turning blue too, but maybe they'll turn back red.
We'll see. Maybe even gold. Who knows?
One step at a time. Yeah, I'm just anything for freedom because the degenerate level that it's gotten to.
Yeah,
with blatant fraud and election interference from big tech.
Yeah.
The Twitter files. Thank God we have a free platform now that will be the key in the next elections.
Yeah. Oh, those were huge. The Twitter files, I was watching those carefully. Those are some big reveals there. I mean, we all suspected all along, but it's nice to have evidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like conspiracy theory just means you might be 6 months, a year ahead of when they leak to the public.
Sure. But once you've got that evidence, you can be like, all right, look, guys, see, we're not so crazy. We're just a little ahead of the times. That's all.
So the 2A is under attack in Maryland, and that's really sad to hear.
It's been under attack for some time. I first got into 2A advocacy in 2013. They had passed Senate Bill 281, or they were trying to pass it, which was a huge assault weapons ban with all the usual features, a long list of banned features, banned by name firearms, things like that. And we got the biggest rally in Annapolis that has ever been there. It was thousands of people had come out. There were lines of protesters all the way around the blocks. There were speakers. It was a huge thing. The governor at the time, Martin O'Malley, literally had security lined up to block him so we wouldn't have to look at the protesters as he went inside. Yeah, they passed that, of course. We do have a Democrat supermajority here in both houses and have for essentially our entire history. And we usually have a Democrat governor. So the legislative front is quite challenging.
This actually gets me because we're looking at elected. So, the most influence is, of course, the executive branch. So if you get in at small town mayors and things like that, but with the party, has anybody thought about taking the backdoor approach? Let's get the party to focus on the judges in those small little counties and work our way up.
I mean, judges would be helpful. We do have a lack of candidates, so we need to work on. We are going to get our first mayor here very shortly. He was winning the race by such a large amount that all his competition dropped out. So Rock Hall, they're going to be our first Libertarian mayor in the state.
There we go. There we go.
That. We had some other good runs. I myself ran this last cycle, and we had a guy run for a state senate that made 27% and actually won some of his precincts. So we're growing.
There you go. So, and then the 24 cycle, we just got to get a good presidential candidate this time.
That would help a great deal.
And that way we can play and get the news. So, it's like, see, we actually have somebody on the TV that's
Yeah.
running for president. We're a real party.
Right.
Like,
And
people do not get the value of this.
absolutely. I think a lot of people don't understand the value of their vote. In particular for presidency, yeah, we're probably not going to win Maryland. It's a very blue state. So we're not going to get 51%. But we might clearing 1% preserves ballot access. That will save the party a vast amount of money, as well as time, which we can use for running local candidates to make those winnable races count.
Mhm.
So even like 1% makes a huge difference, and that's something we can achieve. If we get a little higher, you can get declared a major party, and you get to skip all the ballot access stuff henceforth. It's fantastic. And a lot of states have similar laws. The bars are different for each state, but you can absolutely make a difference wherever you are by voting third party.
Well, yeah, because the more we can not have to deal with the ballot access issues,
Oh yeah,
I know we're going to work hard. We're going to get all 50
Yep.
states again in 24.
sure.
Because we had them in 2020 and we had them in the one before that was 16.
Yep.
So third time's a charm. Let's actually see. My hope is we can hit the 15% and get in the debates.
Yep. That would be
Because
fantastic.
then it's anybody's game.
Yep. I do remember Perot growing up, seeing him on TV and being like, oh, this is cool. He got into debates. And of course, they changed the rule afterwards to make it hard to get in, as the duopoly tends to do. But it was cool seeing a third opinion and being like, oh, this is refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, him and Ron Paul.
Yeah.
And, I still look at Ron Paul as very libertarian minded, even though he ran through the Republican side to actually have a chance to win.
Absolutely. Ron Paul's done some great stuff. His son Rand and Thomas Massey are also fairly libertarian candidates, and I hope they do good things.
Exciting times. So how are you guys looking to use tech and things to give you an edge up this next time around?
All right. Well, we are coming off of a growing streak. So we do already have ballot access sorted for 2024 because we had our governor candidate, David Lasher. He did about 4 times better than the previous governor candidate and preserved our access for this cycle. So it's good to see the growth happening. We're doing a lot more outreach. Previously, the party was small and had limited funds. We had to fight this ballot access issue over and over again. Now that we're hopefully free of that cycle, though we always have to make sure not to fall back, we're doing like gun show outreach. We do stands there. We're at county fairs, and we get to go talk to people who literally didn't know we existed.
There you go. And anybody that cares about the Second Amendment is already going to lean more your way anyways.
Absolutely. Most people are pretty happy to see us.
That is cool. I'm glad to see some growth in different parts of the country. The grassroots up, and we just got to get someone we can like launch through a slingshot so they can reflect back some light on everybody else.
It definitely helps. The big election cycles always get more state involvement. People get excited about the presidency. Hopefully, we get a good candidate, and it pushes our numbers higher.
Is Maryland putting forth any contenders?
I don't know
That
anyone
you know
locally that plans to run. Everyone has opinions. I know Mike Tremont came out to our convention and had set up a booth and whatnot and chatted with folks. I believe he's from Virginia. So, but he's probably the closest local contender. Spike may run. We'll have to see how that goes. I don't think he's declared officially yet, but there are people hoping. And so I believe he's Carolinas.
Carolinas, okay.
And
So the East Coast got some representation.
We do, yeah, absolutely. If Dave Smith goes, he's from Jersey, so we'll see.
There we go. So that's coming down the road. I know person with what I'm looking at, because the name recognition is where it's at. And it's like, you got to do things big enough to get into the media.
Yep. And that's a hard game.
Well, you have that game, but we also have another option that nobody really talks about is how much it's pay to play.
Yeah. There's a lot of money involved in politics, and that's usually not to our advantage.
Well, not even that, but just the media in general.
Yeah.
Like I'm an author, like this one was my first book after That's the Path. The next book I know different people, Rob Cosberg that's done it for Russell Brunson and many of the others to get like all the way to New York Times bestsellers, give you in
Okay.
Forbes magazine, things like that. But you're going to drop $50,000-$75,000 to get that media coverage.
Yeah.
But it's, when you think about it, right, it's like, okay, if we get the right people in there, the initial small investment for the potential coverage you can get from that first coverage is huge.
Absolutely. And donations make a big difference too. I know people are donating to the state and the national parties, and that does, especially when it's early in the cycle, it has a large impact because it lets them get that initial message out there, and hopefully it catches.
Mm-hmm. I also know we need more fun doodads and things for people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, you got to learn from your competition.
Sure.
So Obama had the hope and change. And he might change it to complete shit, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
It was still the thought people wanted to change. They want something different. Then you get the slogans for Trump, make America great again. And he's selling straws for $20 a piece for metal straws.
Yeah. There's definitely the slogans, the merchandising, all of that's part of the cycle. Absolutely. Hopefully we see the hats, like Trump's hats are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That worked out for him. So it definitely caught. Hopefully we can have something similar that people like.
Have you thought of any slogans, what you guys going to use for 24?
Not offhand. Probably just go with whatever the candidate goes with. Support them as best we can.
Okay, fair enough. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So what else we got going on to move the thing to freedom? What are you doing in your own life? What are you seeing the party doing that's actually like advancing freedom? We know it's grind until we can walk, but
Sure. A lot of legislative movement, the Defend the Guard. Have you heard about that?
no, please enlighten the audience.
All right. Well, it's a legislative effort that started in West Virginia to require congressional approval of the war before the National Guard can be deployed to combat. This essentially just requires them to fulfill their constitutional duty of declaring war, and has a bunch of nifty side effects, like consider Katrina. When Katrina happened, all the local helicopter units were actually deployed. I believe they're in Iraq at the time, and thus they weren't available for response. Now, the Guard did fly in people from elsewhere, but that took 3 days to make happen. So that initial response was slower. The rescue effort was slower, and that caused a lot of problems. By not deploying our Guard unless we have to, we can keep them available for emergencies. We keep them better available for training, and we can reduce the wear and tear of those deployment cycles on our people. I'm a veteran, so obviously I
and it has the added
advocacy.
It has the added bonus of not letting Biden or whoever the next president is just start more proxy wars without having Congress involved.
Right. Yeah, that is the responsibility of Congress, and they've relinquished their duties in that in many respects, but they should take them back. Right now, all of this is relying on the authorization of use of military force, which dates back to 9/11. Most of the people who voted for that are no longer in office. So it should definitely go back to a new vote anytime we need to start a new war.
Well, that one, yeah, because you go back to the Patriot Act in 2001,
Yeah.
98 out of 100 senators committed treason that day.
That was a wild.
And it's like one was like Feinstein, Goldstein, or something like that, and I forget the other one's name, but yeah, it's like just Congress, everybody's straight treason.
It was a mess. I wish we'd have less of these wars. I wish we got out of Afghanistan faster. The last few years there felt like we were just spinning our wheels, accomplishing nothing. I hope we can avoid getting into Ukraine. We did have some local people. Tim Miller in particular helped set up the whole Rage Against War protest in DC. Being this close to DC, we actually are involved in many protests and those things.
God, their name, bad name. It's like, no, we don't want to rage against war because that's still anger and war in your sentence.
Yeah.
But we're peaceful. We're the party of peace.
We are indeed. it's hard to get those good names that evoke action that don't sound, too over the top sometimes. But it was good. We had many people, thousands and thousands of people showed up. The line to go speak in front of the White House stretched all the way from the White House to the Lincoln Memorial. It was
quite a few
stuffed with
people.
Yeah. Huge rally. So it was fun to see all that happen. I was there for that. And I hope we'll have more of those rallies because Ukraine is still going and it's going to involve a lot of lives lost over there.
Yeah, I've seen stuff with these leaked Pentagon papers. We've got boots in the ground in Ukraine, which I've known about
I
for a
think
couple of years, but nice seeing it released to the public.
Yeah, I believe the AP first broke that a while ago, and then the Pentagon confirmed it was weapon inspectors, is what they said. But it's been definitely known for at least several months at this point. So it's not a lot of boots, but it's still our people, so they still matter.
Well, and then they
nothing
have all the
happens.
ones for training and everything else there. It's like,
Sure.
so you're having the military intelligence there to tell them where to bomb. It's like, here, you go push that button and point that way.
Yeah.
How is that not direct involvement?
We're at least someone involved. We're definitely shipping them all kinds of taxpayer dollars, all kinds of equipment. And it'd be one thing if they're all paying for it, but the fact that we're donating it definitely gives us a stake in it and makes us appear more actively involved. I'd like to see us take a step back from that. There are things we could do to support Ukraine that are not so direct militaristic involvement. First aid stuff, Red Cross. If people want to voluntarily donate to that, I have no issue with that. That'll save lives. If you want to see more military support, we could do something like repealing or reducing the ITAR regulations that prevent people from shipping over firearms or body armor. And that would allow people to voluntarily do things instead of spending many billions of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, there's a pickle in so many sides to that stuff.
There is.
Coming in when you're getting into the geopolitics, I know we've got, fighter jets from China and circling Taiwan. And
yeah, there's some tensions there, have been for a while.
Yeah, it's you're seeing the gradual escalation everywhere. It's like, no, people, we gotta de-escalate.
Yeah, World Wars I and II are bad enough. We don't need to go for round 3.
Yeah, because some of the tech you're seeing there, it's like they're starting to put more autonomous robotics and testing out the equipment out there.
Seeing all these videos coming out of like drones literally dropping grenades on people, you're like, oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, those were coming from, was it Saudi Arabia or one of those other Middle Eastern countries? I apologize, whichever one, if I got it wrong.
Turkey, I think, is making a lot of them. I don't know if it's all of them, but they've definitely been exporting a lot of drones to this.
Yeah, so on the bright side, it's good. Next generation warfare will be less human lives and more robotic lives.
I hope so. If it's drone versus drone, that's a lot better.
We at least need to put down some new ground rules and see what we can do to preserve life and our food supply and everything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, right now it's the loss of life. That's the big thing over there. There's so many people dying. It's probably hundreds of thousands. It's hard to get exact numbers right now.
Yeah, from those Pentagon papers, they were looking at like 300,000 total.
That probably sounds about right. Yeah.
So that's still nice chunk. That's a nice sized city gone.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. That's tragic. So obviously we're opposing that. That's definitely a big thing we're doing. And we fight like as many bills as we can, but unfortunately there's so many bills in the legislature, it's hard to fight them all. I believe they looked at some 6,000 laws over the last 3 months, which is how long our cycle lasts. It's hard to even read all those, let alone.
It's impossible because those things are thousands of pages. There's no way any one person could do that.
Right.
Like I would really like to get past at some point, like a common sense, common man language laws.
Yeah.
That you can read in an afternoon, and then we have to quiz the legislative branch before you can vote.
Yeah.
So you at least have to know what's in the law before you can vote on it.
If memory serves, they once had a law that the bill had to be read aloud in Congress before they could vote on it. So Congress hired a speed reader to just burn through it chipmunk style. So eventually it was seen as pointless and then removed. Yeah, politics is a joke sometimes.
It really is. It's a joke. They have a monopoly on violence for the government, which is why we need good people in there, so it's not being as violent.
Yeah, I mean, monopolies always lead to bad situations. So we need free market solutions, and that's part of why the Second Amendment exists, to remove that monopoly on violence.
Well, and then you have the states' rights, and it's like supposed to be, more local government to the federal, not the other way around.
Sure. The states is better. That said, you still have states like ours where the states are passing some crazy laws too. So
Well, you got Cali and New York are the worst of the worst. So
they're
I
pretty rough.
understand.
Yeah.
Like Cali's so bad, I haven't even visited the state, and I've been to like the continental United States with the exception of Montana and way up to Maine.
Yeah. And the worst thing about it is that stuff trickles down. Like once it goes to California, they start trying it elsewhere. We just recently got the whole mandating electric cars bill, just like California already did. It came over to Maryland and they're trying it here. So
well, that's why I won't invest in multifamily real estate or even single family homes in the entire West Coast, but especially like Washington State.
Sure.
Because if you get a tenant in there after like November 1st, you can't evict them, even start the eviction process till April 15th.
Yeah, I think our COVID eviction moratorium just stopped, like just finally stopped now.
Oh God, I feel really bad for people in your state.
I know one guy
you
who
have
lost,
your work cut out for you.
Yeah, I know one guy who lost like 50 grand on rent because the guy could pay it. He just chose not to. And he's like, this is going to last for a while. So he just didn't pay them for like a couple of years. And he stalled as long as he could, played the game. He actually got renter's assistance from the state. But since it goes directly to the person, not directly to pay the rent, he just kept it. And yeah.
So he got triple paid on top of, oh God.
Yeah, it was quite a scam for a lot of people. We have increasingly worse tenancy laws, especially in Baltimore City, which continues to deteriorate. To bring it back to the gun control stuff, at the 2013, we were actually at a low point for murders in Baltimore, but they're still pretty high. So obviously they were pushing the narrative that if you pass this gun control, murders will drop. Well, every year since they passed that, murders have increased. Yep, predictably, and they're now almost double what they were then. The murder rate's insane. So we passed more gun control this year. It's probably not going to get any better.
No, it's definitely not. And that's where, like with my projects, working on building a free independent country for New Atlantis, instead of just having the Second Amendment where you have the right to bear arms, we need to start teaching people the responsibility. You not only have the right to bear, but you have the responsibility to defend those around you.
Yeah.
Like only a good person with a gun can stop a bad person with a gun. Unless you're like Bruce Lee and can take the gun off him, and then you're still using the gun. So
right. I mean, realistically, if you bring a knife or your hands to a gunfight, that's not great odds. You're going to need a fighting chance at least. And we've seen that. We've seen a few people around defend others. There's a gentleman in the mall recently. Made his shots from 40 yards away. He hit 8 or 10 times, stopped shooting right there. I respect that.
Yeah, and those gun-free zones are not safe. It's just a spot to pick off the pigeons.
Yep. I mean, this whole mass shooting thing basically started with the gun-free zones. It wasn't until the early 90s that we had those. I remember growing up, I still had my gun safety class in the basement of the school where the range was. And that was normal in the early 90s.
Yeah, like the stuff we had back then was like Waco, Texas, where it was the FBI murdering people.
Right. That's what happened back then, yeah. But it wasn't until the big anti-drug push that Bush did. He created the gun-free zones. And right after that, once they were implemented, we saw Columbine. We saw the whole modern age of mass shootings begin. And those are almost invariably in those zones. But does anyone want to revisit this law? No. It was originally just passed so they could tack on additional penalties to drug dealers. But now we're legalizing drugs, and so the original purpose is mostly futile. And yet we still are stuck with this law. It's crazy.
We'll figure it out. We're
Yeah.
humanity. We will evolve. I have faith.
Yep.
It might get a little shaky at times with we see all the crazy stuff going on in the world, but I have faith in the goodness of humanity that we will preserve through.
Yeah. You were saying something about Project Atlantis. Is that a seasteading project or?
Yes, definitely more seasteading. As you can see the map behind me, you have more
Cool.
than 200 nautical miles from shore is each country's exclusive economic zone. Beyond that, you are in international waters. So most of the world, as you can see, is ocean.
Yeah, there's a ton of it. Free real estate.
With my patent pending product, these will be larger, filled with foam. They are fractal, so we can go infinitely horizontal and infinitely vertical.
Okay.
So we'll be able to build skyscrapers and that right in the middle of the ocean in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the climate change BS because we know there's geoengineering and, like they've been planting storms in the Rocky Mountains for ski season since the 70s that we know about with silver nitrate.
Yeah. There's definitely some various weather projects that exist. The big thing that gets me with global warming is that many of the people that are the biggest proponents of it don't take any personal action themselves. They're flying these jets everywhere, the private jets. You see at the climate change conventions, there's hundreds of them there. And of course, they're buying oceanside beachfront property with often mansions on it. If they really believed that sea level rise was
they'd be at 1,000 feet up or higher.
Right, they'd be at least a little ways back from the ocean. So
yeah, and you still have risk of tsunamis with earthquakes and that, but it's not enough. Like the sea level's not rising that much, even if the whole polar cap's melted.
Sure,
it's only going up a couple feet.
Like weather changes. I have no issue saying that climate change exists to some extent, but the idea that we all have to change and that none of them do strikes me as inherently unfair and unreasonable.
Well, it's all about control, manipulation. We have the WEF, the Davos group, and the central banks of the central banks. I know Tom Longo was talking about with his podcast, how the libertarians are inadvertently helping globalism by trying to take down the Fed when it's like, hold on, as much as we hate to admit it right now, Jerome Powell's the only one fighting on our side to try and minimize the chance of World War III and keep the currency from being completely hyperinflated.
Sure. I mean, it's rough, and that the Fed is doing kind of a rough job of this. The currency is already getting a fair bit of inflation, but they at least want the dollar to remain valid. So in that respect, we are on the same side. And yeah, the idea of a world currency or a digitally controlled central bank currency is terrible. I want no part of any of that.
Have you heard about the project Icebreaker?
I've not.
Okay, you know how you have the central bank for each country, and then you have the IMF above them, and then you have the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of central banks. They just announced their CBDC in the last 3 days.
Okay.
That will control through the IMF to be above all the world country currencies.
Oh, wow.
And the IMF then released a report day before yesterday or day before, sometime beginning of this week. Either Monday or Tuesday, based on their time zone in Europe. Scary stuff what they're doing. But an actual guide for the countries for helping the countries set up their individual CBDCs that are subservient to the other CBDC.
Wow. Yeah, I want no part of that. I'm gonna be buying more silver and gold. I mean, what I got right now has been up almost 20% in the last 6 months. So it's probably not going to stop.
No, because they are going to at some point have to hyperinflate the currency. It's especially Europe's going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And there is the BRICS currency that's supposed to be coming that's backed by gold and silver, but it's still a
Yeah.
CBDC for like 80% of the
Sure.
world.
And how much do you trust Russia and China to control your money? I mean, not a whole lot for me.
Well, as long as you can at least exchange it directly for gold or silver,
Sure.
whatever, that, it would have more value in bringing together the countries.
That's true. Russia is stockpiling gold, and that is some real wealth there.
And so is China and
Mm-hmm.
Turkey and Saudi Arabia and all the Eastern countries. India have been amassing massive amounts of gold
Yep.
to do a joint currency like how the EU did.
I mean,
That's
the
actually
EU,
exchangeable and backed.
okay. Yeah, the EU has economically they are a force to be considered. So there's still I think larger than BRICS is.
Not anymore. It's BRICS plus.
I mean, depending on what happens, that could all change. But
Well, you have even Mexico has formally applied to the BRICS.
okay.
You have both Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia have all applied. And several countries in Africa. So you had Brazil, Argentina has applied. Like it's like half the world population now. It's like it's grown
That's
quite a bit.
There's some concern there, absolutely. And you're right. Every fiat currency eventually ends in hyperinflation. They always have. They always will. It's in their nature. So backed by gold, that might work at least until whenever they decide to finally stop backing with gold, which tends to be a bit of a pattern with a lot of these currencies.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's slated to come out August 28th. Whether it'll actually hit that deadline that they proposed, who knows? But I'm just curious what the value of the dollar is going to go. My guess is the dollar will probably halve overnight, which means your gold, your groceries, everything else will double overnight.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't come to that. I am worried that if
I hope it's less than that, but I can see that as like a doomsday scenario.
things often change very, very slowly until you hit that tipping point, and then suddenly they're very fast. And I don't know where that tipping point is for the dollar, but it has to exist somewhere.
Yeah, because we're somewhere between 120 to 130% debt to GDP. So inflating away the debt is their only option.
As the cost of servicing the debt rises, it becomes more and more of a crunch. Sooner or later, they have to do something.
Yeah, I was reading from Mark Moss, within the next 12 months, 30% of the debt has to be exchanged and changed to these new higher rates.
It's a lot of T-bills.
Yeah, the fact they had so many short term, as opposed to more long term. That's what I'll give Trump for the idea of a 100-year T-bill that they could have done when rates were zero. Right, could have preserved a lot of the debt from the hyperinflation.
As long as you have someone who wants to buy a 100-year T-bill. I mean, right now they're relying pretty heavily on the Social Security pyramid scheme to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to run dry.
What was it? The 3-month Treasury bill just doubled or tripled its amount of buys here in the last week too.
Oh, wow.
So they're looking at something weird's going to happen in the bond market in about 3 months. So May, June, July. Wonder what's going to happen for our July 4th this year.
I don't know. It's a crazy world out there. Definitely diversify your investments. Keep safe as much as you can.
Yes, and get as much out of the system as you can.
Yeah.
I'm prepared. Like I recommend people, have a couple months of food, a couple of weeks of water. Just be prepared, because with inflation here, it's like anything you buy now, you're buying at a discount of what it's going to be a year from now.
Absolutely. Pay your bills up. Get all those big purchases off the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're going to use debt, use good debt, like real estate that's cash flowing, and you have tenants paying the mortgage.
Absolutely. Now, I got my house back when rates were low, so I can't move now. But if you're just buying now, property's still better if you're buying it now versus waiting for inflation to rack it up.
Yeah, because the value of property can still go down even if the nominal price goes up.
Right. Yeah.
So, Travis, what's a good way for people to get hold of you? Any last words on Freedom from Maryland?
There's just get involved in whatever thing drives your passion. That's the big message takeaway there. It doesn't take that many people to make a huge difference. Often just a handful of people contacting a representative, staging a protest, makes an immense difference. To get a hold of me, you can pop me an email over at travis.lerol@gmail.com. My last name is spelled Lerol. And hit me if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Travis. Yeah, you guys, nobody's coming to save you. You got to take the personal responsibility and get involved. If you want things to get better, you got to do it from the grassroots.
Absolutely.
We got to stand up to these dictators. There's no way around it. This is Jedi signing off.